The emergency session at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency headquarters had been called with code red urgency at 5 a.m. on Friday morning as the nation's top infrastructure protection officials rushed to the secure facility in Arlington, Virginia, to receive what CISA Director Jen Easterly had described as the most critical infrastructure threat briefing in the agency's history. The fortified command center, designed to coordinate responses to nationwide infrastructure emergencies, now hosted the most comprehensive gathering of American infrastructure security leadership ever assembled to address Attorney General Pam Bondi's alarming discovery of systematic Iranian targeting of America's most vital infrastructure systems. CISA Director Easterly sat at the head of the secure conference table, flanked by Deputy Director Nitin Natarajan, Infrastructure Security Division Director Brian Harrell, and Cybersecurity Division Director Eric Goldstein, while the room filled with senior officials from the Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, Environmental Protection Agency, Federal Communications Commission, and Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Facing them were Attorney General Bondi, FBI Director Christopher Wray, NSA Director General Paul Nakasone, and Director of Critical Infrastructure Protection, General Patricia Williams. The most senior officials responsible for protecting American infrastructure assembled to brief CISA leadership on a threat that had fundamentally altered their understanding of Iranian capabilities against American critical systems. Director Easterly, distinguished officials, Attorney General Bondi began, her voice carrying the urgency of intelligence discoveries that had revealed Iranian targeting of American infrastructure on a scale that threatened the foundation of American civilization. I have requested this emergency infrastructure briefing because we have discovered systematic Iranian agent operations specifically targeting every category of critical infrastructure that sustains American society, representing the most comprehensive foreign threat to American infrastructure systems ever identified. She activated CISA's advanced threat visualization systems, revealing real-time intelligence analysis that painted a terrifying picture of Iranian agent operations that had systematically mapped, penetrated, and positioned themselves to attack every critical infrastructure sector identified in the National Infrastructure Protection Plan. The main display showed a comprehensive threat matrix overlaying Iranian agent positions against the nation's electrical grid, water systems, transportation networks, communications infrastructure, financial systems, healthcare facilities, food and agriculture systems, and government facilities. What makes this threat unprecedented in American infrastructure security is not just its comprehensiveness, but its operational sophistication and immediate capability, Bondi continued, pointing to specific threat indicators displayed across the infrastructure visualization. Iranian agents have not simply been gathering intelligence about American infrastructure, they have been systematically positioning themselves within critical infrastructure operations with the immediate capability to execute coordinated attacks that could paralyze American society. CISA Director Easterly studied the threat matrix with growing alarm, her experience in infrastructure protection immediately recognizing the catastrophic potential of the Iranian capabilities being displayed. Madam Attorney General, when you say every category of critical infrastructure, are you telling us that Iranian agents have achieved operational positions within all 16 critical infrastructure sectors identified in Presidential Policy Directive 21? Director Easterly, that's exactly what our investigation has revealed. Iranian agents have systematically targeted and achieved operational access to electrical power systems, water and wastewater treatment facilities, transportation networks, telecommunications systems, financial services, healthcare and public health facilities, food and agriculture systems, government facilities, defense industrial base, information technology systems, energy sector facilities, chemical manufacturing plants, commercial facilities, critical manufacturing systems, dams and levees and emergency services operations. She clicked to the next section of the briefing, revealing detailed operational analysis of Iranian agent positioning within each critical infrastructure sector. Unlike traditional espionage or terrorist operations that focus on symbolic targets or specific facilities, Iranian agents have positioned themselves within the operational control systems and management structures that actually run American infrastructure on a daily basis. The implications sent a chill through the room filled with infrastructure protection professionals. Deputy Director Natarajan had spent his career analyzing infrastructure vulnerabilities, but had never encountered evidence of such systematic foreign penetration of American critical systems. Madam Attorney General, what kind of operational access do these Iranian agents have to infrastructure control systems? Are we looking at the capability to actually manipulate or shut down critical infrastructure operations? Deputy Director Natarajan, our analysis indicates that Iranian agents have achieved what infrastructure security analysts call operational control access to systems that could allow them to manipulate, disrupt, or completely shut down critical infrastructure operations, serving millions of Americans simultaneously. She moved to a classified section of the briefing that revealed intercepted Iranian communications and technical analysis, documenting their agents' access to supervisory control and data acquisition systems, industrial control systems, and other critical infrastructure management technologies. For example, we have identified Iranian agents with administrative access to SCADA systems controlling electrical power distribution for the New York metropolitan area, water treatment facilities serving Southern California, natural gas pipeline systems throughout Texas, and telecommunications switching centers that carry critical government and military communications. Infrastructure Security Division. Director Harrell leaned forward, studying the technical analysis with the expertise of someone who had spent decades protecting American infrastructure systems. Madam Attorney General, if Iranian agents have administrative access to infrastructure control systems at the level you're describing, they could potentially execute coordinated attacks that create cascading failures across multiple infrastructure sectors simultaneously. Director Harrell, that appears to be exactly what Iranian agents have been positioning themselves to accomplish. Our intelligence analysis indicates they have been systematically mapping infrastructure interdependencies and vulnerabilities to maximize the cascading effects of potential coordinated attacks. She displayed advanced modeling analysis that showed how Iranian agents could potentially trigger cascading infrastructure failures that would affect multiple sectors simultaneously. Iranian agents appear to understand that American infrastructure systems are highly interconnected and that disrupting key nodes can create cascading failures that paralyze much larger geographic regions and population centers than the initial attack points. NSA Director General Nakasone had been analyzing signals intelligence related to Iranian infrastructure targeting operations. Madam Attorney General, our communications intercepts indicate that Iranian agents are receiving real-time technical guidance from Iranian infrastructure specialists and cyber warfare experts. Are we dealing with Iranian agents who have been specifically trained to attack American infrastructure systems? General Nakasone, that's exactly what our analysis indicates. Iranian agents targeting American infrastructure have received specialized training in industrial control systems, critical infrastructure operations, and cyber-physical attack methodologies. They are not simply intelligence operatives, they are infrastructure warfare specialists who have been specifically prepared to attack American critical systems. The revelation that Iranian agents had received specialized training in infrastructure attack methodologies represented a level of sophisticated preparation that went far beyond traditional espionage or terrorism concerns. She activated another section of the briefing showing detailed profiles of Iranian agents who had been identified within critical infrastructure operations. Let me provide specific examples of the Iranian infrastructure targeting capabilities we've identified. In Houston, we have identified Mahmoud Rashidi, who works as a senior control systems engineer for a major petrochemical complex that processes over 20% of American petroleum refining capacity. The profile showed an Iranian agent who had worked for 8 years in a critical position within American energy infrastructure, while systematically mapping vulnerabilities and developing attack capabilities. Rashidi has administrative access to industrial control systems that could potentially disrupt petroleum refining operations throughout the Gulf Coast region, creating fuel shortages that could affect transportation, emergency services, and military operations across multiple states. She continued with additional examples that demonstrated the scope of Iranian infrastructure penetration. In Phoenix, we have Fatima Al-Hosseini, who works for the Regional Water Authority and has access to control systems serving over 4 million people. In Seattle, Ahmed Karimi has worked for a major telecommunications company for 6 years and has access to fiber optic networks that carry critical government and military communications throughout the Pacific Northwest. Each profile represented years of patient positioning by Iranian intelligence services to place their agents in positions where they could cause maximum damage to American infrastructure and society. Department of Energy Infrastructure Security Director, Dr. Sarah Martinez, had been analyzing the energy sector implications of Iranian infrastructure targeting. Madam Attorney General, what's our assessment of Iranian agent capabilities against electrical power systems? Could they potentially cause widespread blackouts that affect multiple states simultaneously? Dr. Martinez, that's one of our most serious concerns. Iranian agents have positioned themselves within electrical power generation, transmission, and distribution systems with the apparent capability to cause cascading power failures that could affect tens of millions of Americans. She displayed technical analysis showing how Iranian agents could potentially manipulate electrical grid operations to create the conditions for widespread blackouts. Iranian agents understand that the American electrical grid operates as an interconnected system and that coordinated attacks on key transmission nodes could potentially cause cascading failures that spread far beyond the initial attack points. Department of Transportation Infrastructure Security Director Michael Thompson had been studying the transportation sector implications of Iranian targeting operations. Madam Attorney General, what kind of access do Iranian agents have to transportation infrastructure systems? Could they potentially disrupt air traffic control, railroad operations, or port facilities? Director Thompson, Iranian agents have achieved concerning levels of access to multiple transportation infrastructure systems. We have identified agents with access to air traffic control systems, railroad dispatching operations, port management systems, and highway traffic management networks. The possibility that Iranian agents could simultaneously disrupt multiple transportation systems represented a threat that could paralyze American mobility and economic activity across entire regions. She revealed specific examples of Iranian agent positioning within transportation infrastructure. In Chicago, Iranian agents have access to railroad dispatching systems that coordinate freight transportation throughout the Midwest. In Los Angeles, they have positions within port authority operations that could disrupt the cargo operations that handle over 40% of American international trade. Financial Crimes Enforcement Network Director Jennifer Rodriguez had been analyzing the financial sector implications of Iranian infrastructure targeting. Madam Attorney General, what's our assessment of Iranian agent capabilities against financial infrastructure systems? Could they potentially disrupt banking operations or payment processing systems? Director Rodriguez, Iranian agents have positioned themselves within financial services companies with access to payment processing systems, electronic banking networks, and financial market operations that could potentially create widespread economic disruption. She displayed analysis showing Iranian agent access to financial infrastructure systems that process trillions of dollars in daily transactions. Iranian agents appear to understand that disrupting financial infrastructure could create economic panic and social instability that multiplies the impact of physical infrastructure attacks. The briefing continued for another 5 hours as infrastructure protection officials analyzed every aspect of Iranian targeting operations and their potential impact on American critical systems. Each revelation painted an increasingly alarming picture of Iranian capabilities that could fundamentally disrupt American society and economic activity. FBI Director Wray outlined the law enforcement response to Iranian infrastructure targeting operations. We are implementing Operation Infrastructure Shield, the most comprehensive infrastructure protection investigation in American history. We will systematically investigate every Iranian agent with access to critical infrastructure while working to secure vulnerable systems and prevent potential attacks. The operation would require unprecedented coordination between federal agencies, state and local authorities, and private sector infrastructure operators. Phase 1 involves immediate security assessment of all infrastructure systems that may have been compromised by Iranian agents. Phase 2 implements enhanced monitoring and protection protocols for critical infrastructure operations. Phase 3 executes arrests and system security operations to neutralize Iranian agent capabilities. CISA Director Easterly addressed the assembled infrastructure protection officials with the gravity of someone who understood they had just learned about a threat that could fundamentally alter American infrastructure security priorities. Ladies and gentlemen, Attorney General Bondi has just revealed that Iranian agents have achieved systematic access to American critical infrastructure systems on a scale that could enable coordinated attacks capable of paralyzing American society. This represents the most serious infrastructure security threat we have ever encountered. She looked around the room at each infrastructure protection official and federal agency representative. The Iranian agents targeting our infrastructure are not simply gathering intelligence or conducting routine espionage. They have been specifically trained and positioned to execute coordinated attacks that could cause cascading failures across multiple infrastructure sectors simultaneously. The infrastructure protection officials understood they had just received intelligence that would fundamentally alter American infrastructure security operations and require massive investments in security enhancements to address the Iranian threat. As the officials dispersed to begin implementing Operation Infrastructure Shield, Attorney General Pam Bondi remained behind to coordinate with CISA leadership and infrastructure protection specialists. The exposure of systematic Iranian agent targeting of American critical infrastructure had revealed a threat that went beyond traditional national security concerns. It represented a direct assault on the systems that sustained American civilization itself. Standing in CISA's Infrastructure Protection Command Center, surrounded by displays showing the real-time status of American critical infrastructure systems, Bondi reflected on the magnitude of what American infrastructure protection forces would need to accomplish to secure the nation's vital systems against Iranian attack capabilities. The Iranian intelligence services had achieved what may have been the most sophisticated infrastructure targeting operation in modern history, positioning their agents within the operational control systems for virtually every category of American critical infrastructure. But the Iranian infrastructure targeting had finally been discovered, and American infrastructure protection capabilities were mobilizing to secure every vulnerable system and neutralize every Iranian agent threat. The battle to protect American infrastructure would require sustained effort and unprecedented coordination between government and private sector partners. Within hours of the CISA briefing, Bondi had established a National Infrastructure Defense Task Force that brought together every major federal agency responsible for infrastructure protection, state emergency management organizations, and private sector infrastructure operators. The Department of Homeland Security's National Infrastructure Coordination Center had been expanded to accommodate the largest infrastructure protection operation in American history, where infrastructure security specialists, federal agents, cyber warfare experts, and emergency management coordinators worked around the clock to secure American critical systems against Iranian attack capabilities. The first critical security success came from the Department of Energy's Electricity Subsector Coordinating Council, where Dr. Michael Rodriguez had been working with major electrical utilities to identify and secure systems that may have been compromised by Iranian agents. Madam Attorney General, Dr. Rodriguez reported during the morning operational briefing, "We have identified Iranian agents with access to electrical grid control systems serving over 30 million Americans across multiple states. We're implementing immediate security protocols to prevent potential coordinated attacks on power generation and transmission systems." The possibility that Iranian agents could execute coordinated attacks against American electrical infrastructure that served tens of millions of people represented an existential threat that demanded immediate protective action. Dr. Rodriguez, what's our timeline for securing electrical infrastructure systems against Iranian agent capabilities? How quickly can we implement protective measures? Ma'am, we're working with utility companies to implement enhanced security protocols within 72 hours, but completely securing all potentially compromised systems could take weeks or months, depending on the extent of Iranian agent access. Meanwhile, the Environmental Protection Agency's Water Security Division had been coordinating with water utility operators to assess and secure water treatment and distribution systems that may have been targeted by Iranian agents. Madam Attorney General, reported EPA Water Security Director Dr. Lisa Chen, Iranian agents have positioned themselves within water treatment facilities serving over 20 million Americans. We're implementing emergency security measures to prevent potential attacks on drinking water systems and wastewater treatment operations. The possibility that Iranian agents could simultaneously attack water infrastructure serving millions of Americans represented a public health threat that could cause mass casualties and social panic. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh from the FBI's Cyber Division had been investigating Iranian agent access to telecommunications infrastructure and discovering capabilities that could disrupt emergency communications and internet connectivity for large population centers. Madam Attorney General, Agent Walsh reported during the evening briefing, Iranian agents have access to telecommunications, switching centers, and fiber optic networks that carry critical government communications, emergency services communications, and internet traffic for major metropolitan areas. They could potentially disrupt communications during any emergency or crisis situation. The possibility that Iranian agents could disrupt communications infrastructure during a national emergency represented a strategic threat that could compromise American response capabilities when they were most needed. Dr. Patricia Williams from the Department of Transportation's Infrastructure Security Office had been analyzing Iranian agent access to aviation, railroad, and shipping systems that were critical to American economic activity and national defense logistics. Madam Attorney General, Dr. Williams reported, Iranian agents have positioned themselves within air traffic control systems, railroad dispatching operations, and port management facilities that could potentially paralyze American transportation networks. Coordinated attacks on transportation infrastructure could disrupt both civilian commerce and military logistics operations. The strategic implications were staggering. Iranian agents could potentially disrupt the transportation systems that sustained American economic activity and military readiness, creating cascading effects that could compromise American national security during any international crisis. As intelligence continued to flow in from infrastructure protection agencies and private sector operators across the country, the true scope of Iranian infrastructure targeting became clearer. This was not just espionage or potential sabotage, it was a comprehensive assault on the systems that sustained American civilization, planned and positioned with remarkable sophistication over many years. Standing in the National Infrastructure Defense Task Force Command Center, surrounded by infrastructure security specialists and federal agents working to secure American critical systems, Attorney General Pam Bondi knew that the battle to protect American infrastructure would require the largest coordinated security effort in the nation's history. The Iranian intelligence services had achieved unprecedented access to American critical infrastructure systems, positioning their agents to execute coordinated attacks that could paralyze American society. But their infrastructure targeting had finally been discovered, and American infrastructure protection capabilities were mobilizing to demonstrate that the United States would defend its vital systems with overwhelming force and absolute determination. Operation Infrastructure Shield would mark the beginning of the most comprehensive infrastructure protection campaign in American history, designed to secure every vulnerable system, neutralize every Iranian agent threat, and restore American confidence in the security of the critical infrastructure that sustained the nation. Attorney General Pam Bondi was determined to prove that while Iranian agents had achieved remarkable access to American infrastructure systems, the ultimate victory would belong to American infrastructure protection forces defending the vital systems that sustained American civilization against all foreign threats.